Hey guys, I'm not dead, but that RE2 video just like really burned me out, and then I started playing Ocarina of Time, and I was gonna make a video on that, but I just don't know where to go in that, so I might not make that. But I have been playing some Last of Us Part 2, and this gave me a really interesting idea. Was Ellie's fight at the end with Abby actually worth it? Now, the question arises in what does a fight being worth it actually mean? If it's part of a video game, obviously in order to beat it, you have to do said fight. So most players are going to say, yeah, it was worth it. I had to beat the game. I'm talking more on an emotional level for Ellie, and I want to just kind of get my thoughts on that. Ellie goes through hell and back in The Last of Us Part 2 with the biggest, I guess, hurdle you could say. That doesn't seem like the right term, but I'm going to use the word hurdle, is the death of Joel, who became her father figure in the first game. He is viciously killed by Abby, who is the duo-tagonist? I don't know how to say it, but it's the second protagonist of the game that you play as, because the game's split into both their stories. Now, don't get me wrong. Joel, he had this coming, and that may sound like a hot take, but let's think about what Joel did for a minute. Joel was a terrible person, but everybody in The Last of Us is terrible people because people do what they have to do to survive. If that means I have to kill somebody, I gotta kill you. If I have to take your stuff, I have to kill you. It is survival of the fittest. He did these things, and there is a 20-year gap where we don't know what he did, where he could have done horrible things. He doesn't flat out admit it, but he makes it quite clear to Ellie that he's done some things that he's not proud of. He was like the people they met in Pittsburgh at some point in this time. So Joel has done some really, really bad things, and karma exists in a way. Joel did what he did at the end of the first game, which saved Ellie, but in the process, he killed Abby's father. Abby finds her father dead in the procedure room and makes it her mission to hunt down Joel and make him pay. And the only reason why most people didn't like Abby at the start is because, oh my god, they killed Joel. This was our main character in the first game. We've come to love him. But then you have to think from Abby's perspective, her dad was just doing her job and got killed out of nowhere. So she's going to be upset and she wants revenge. And she gets that revenge by finally tracking down Joel after a several number of years and kills him. And Ellie then wants revenge, and Ellie sure as hell gets her revenge. Now, you may realize I used the word revenge a lot in that last, sentence there. And that's because there's a theory online that both Last of Us games are broken into a single word. The Last of Us 1 is broken into the word love. It's a story of love. Joel was so cold and just destroyed inside after the death of Sarah, and he wouldn't let anybody close because he's afraid to lose them again, until he met Ellie. Ellie, kind of reminded him of Sarah. They were roughly the same age, and Joel makes it his mission to bring her to the Fireflies, but through their journey, he starts to see Ellie as his own daughter again and begins to love and care for her like Ellie was his own daughter. Whereas the second game is hate. The Last of Us Part 2 is a story about hate. There is very few happy moments in this game. Like, the first game had its moments where things were kind of happy. They were cracking jokes, they were laughing. Take the car screens, for example, when they were on the way to Pittsburgh with the comic book. That's funny. Last of Us 2 has very little of that. It is a very dark and gloomy, depressing game. It's filled with rage. Ellie tracks down all of Abby's friends and kills them brutally, causing one of them to breathe in spores, beating them to death with a pipe, slicing their throats. It is a story of hatred. There is not a single person in this game that Ellie really cares for, besides Dina. Every person she meets, she probably ends up killing. Okay, now this brings me to my main question that I asked at the start. Was Ellie's fight with Abby at the end of the game actually worth it? And I want to say, no, it was not. For a multitude of reasons. One, when you finally see Abby at the end of the game, the last time Ellie saw her was in Seattle on Abby's day 3 at the theater. Abby was this big, hulking, person. She was big. She was built. That's part of her character. When you see her now in Santa Barbara, she's weak, she's frail, most of her muscle mass is gone, she's beaten, bloody, battered, and bruised, and so is Ellie. Ellie is also in rough shape because when she got to Santa Barbara, she fell into a trap, got stabbed in her side, and been bleeding out basically the entire day. Not to mention, she also got bit a second time on her hand, so they're both in rough shape.
I can't let you leave. I'm not doing this. No. I'm not gonna fight you. Yes, you will. He's not a part of this. You made him a part of this. Okay. Okay.
Abby doesn't even want to fight Ellie at this point because she knows that it's not worth it. Like, what's done is done. Nothing can be changed. Joel is dead. He's not coming back. And she wasn't going to. And it wasn't until Ellie threatened Lev with her switchblade by putting her switchblade to Lev's throat that Abby was finally like, alright, I will fight you. And this is probably just to appease Ellie that she'll stop, right? This fight is quite possibly one of the most gruesome fights that I've seen in any video game. When I first played this back in 2020, I was cringing so hard at this fight because it's so just like rough and gross. And not even gross in like a, oh god, there's blood, whatever. I'm not skeevish of blood or whatever. It's just the fact that they are so beaten and just physically worn down at this point, and they still are throwing hands. Like, they are still going at it. And it is just painful to watch because both of these women have been through so much emotional, physical, and mental pain at this point that I'm like, oh my god, Ellie, stop, please. And this fight just keeps going on and on and on. It's arduous and strenuous until Abby bites off Ellie's ring and pinky finger. And I know this is a really weird thing to bring up, but it's gonna have a really big like role in a minute. But this part needs to be like talked about. After Abby bites off Ellie's fingers, Ellie is like pissed now because, well, she's missing fingers and she's trying to kill Abby, and it really looks like she's gonna go through it. Like, she's just gonna choke her out and drown her in the water until she gets like a flash of Joel in her mind, and then she stops. And I don't know if it's because she realizes, like, herself that Joel's gone and this isn't going to solve anything, or if it's maybe, like, the parental advice, like, oh, fighting's never worth it, or whatever the case may be. But she stops, and she lets Abby go.
Go. Just take him.
And this is where the Santa Barbara chapter of The Last of Us Part 2 ends, with Abby getting on a boat and leaving, and Ellie is sitting in the water, crying and nursing her wounds. And you think it's just gonna fade to black now, but there's one more scene that is very, very important. So the last scene of the game is Ellie returning back to her house, which is outside of Jackson, because after Abby Day 3 is finished, it is shown that Ellie has moved into a house with Dina. At some point, Dina had JJ, which was her son, with Jesse, and the two of them are just looking after JJ, living on the house. Everything is very peaceful. But when Ellie makes the decision to go after Abby, Dina basically says, if you go after her and you come back, I will not be here. And Dina sticks to her word. Ellie comes inside, and it is empty. There is nothing that any of them put up in the house there. Dina took it all and only left Ellie's stuff. Ellie tries playing the song that Joel taught her, as this is her last real connection with Joel, and she is struggling immensely with it. And then she thinks back to the night before he was killed on the porch when they had their conversation. Now, this conversation they have is one of the most important conversations in the entire series between part 1 and part 2 because of a specific line that Joel says that I really, really want to focus on. And that the whole reason why Ellie and Joel aren't even talking is because Ellie is upset with Joel because Ellie feels like if she had died in that hospital, they would have made a cure, everything would have been better, her life would have had meaning. And Joel says, after everything's said and done, he would have done it all over if he ever had a second shot. Meaning he doesn't really regret what he did.
I was supposed to die in that hospital. My life would have fucking mattered. But you took that from me.
If somehow the Lord gave me a second chance at that moment, I would do it all over again.
And this is where Ellie realized, even though what Joel did was incredibly selfish, he did it out of a place of love for her. And Ellie, although it will be hard, wants to try and forgive him.
I don't think I can ever forgive you for that. But I would like to try.
I'd like that.
And this is where Ellie and Joel begin to patch up their relationship. They were supposed to start watching movies again and hanging out, but it's the next day that Abby ends up killing Joel, and this was never able to come to fruition. And with that, it flashes back to Ellie. She puts the guitar down because she can't play it anymore. The guitar was her last, shred that she had to hold on to Joel, and it's gone now because Abby bit off her fingers and she can't play it anymore. And that's going to be a permanent reminder that Joel's gone, and it sucks. It's sad, but she walks outside and walks away from her house, leaving the guitar and everything she had from her old life. And then the game ends. We don't know what happened to Ellie afterwards. If I had to guess, she probably went back to Jackson, but the game leaves that ending to player interpretation. And that's my thoughts. I know this is a little different because normally I'm covering video games, and I guess I still am, but I just beat The Last of Us again on Saturday, and I was like, I need to talk about this. This game is heart-wrenching, and I need to get thoughts on it. And this was the best scene that I thought I could talk about, because everybody in the world has talked about the death of Joel. That was the big thing. I didn't really do YouTube at this point when that happened, so I didn't really talk about it. I didn't have a way to. But now, I want to talk about the ending, because I think the ending might be more impactful than his death itself. But that's just me. I plan on having a Resident Evil 4 remake video out at when it comes out. I don't know. I'm very inconsistent with these kind of things. But hopefully soon. I hope you liked the video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.